The Taliban is a ruthless fundamentalist group that plagued Afghanistan with unjust legislation and hard discipline. Although their rule in Afghanistan ended in 2001, the Taliban is still around today, causing chaos for the Afghan citizens. One major issue that Afghanistan is facing with this fundamentalist group is that Afghan children are being recruited to join the Taliban. In recent history, the Taliban funded the group of terrorists, Al-Qaeda, that were responsible for the horrific events that happened on September 11, 2001. There has been much speculation that these kids are being trained, specifically boys, to be suicide bombers. The Afghan government finds this issue to be nearly impossible to stop. Therefore, a second party should intervene and help create legislation and social reform to save these children from entering a life of terrorism. The UN, with full support of the United States, should intervene and help create shelters and a better school system and more opportunities for Afghan children, to show them that they do not have to join a type of group or gang in order to be somebody. Afghanistan's issues with poverty and violence all contribute to the issue of young boys being recruited as suicide bombers. Afghanistan needs the extra push to reach their goals of peace. With the help of the UN and the US government, the issue of young men joining the Taliban could end. Studies have shown that the main reason why these kids join groups like the Taliban is to escape from their present living conditions. The Save Children Federation states that 70% of children in Afghanistan live under the poverty line. The BBC reported that the UN believes that most of Afghanistan's poverty comes from the corrupt and unstable government in Afghanistan. The intervention of both the United States and the UN is needed to put an end to this problem. If a country cannot run itself properly, how can the people have a livable lifestyle? The Taliban promise these children food, water, shelter, and unity. When a child has nothing, he or she will not hesitate to take the opportunity to become somebody. The task that Afghanistan and the UN have in front of them is to give these kids more opportunities. A young boy should not have to feel that the only way to get rid of his financial and emotional issues is to become a part of the Taliban. America can relate, for it has its own problem with kids joining all types of gangs and clans. We must give the youth of Afghanistan hope that they can become something other than the next suicide bomber. To be specific, they need to learn that they have the freedom to choose any study or avenue where they can succeed and enjoy life. Education is a key component that is contributing to the ignorance and uneducated decisions made by most of Afghanistan's youth, which pushes them to join the Taliban. I mean, the numbers don't lie at all. 72% of boys over the age of 15 are illiterate, while 50% of Afghan children between the age of 7 and 13 do not attend school at all. The children's learning skills are inadequate, therefore they cannot make good decisions. Since the end of the Taliban rule in 2001, there have been improvements in the education system. 1/3 of the population of Afghan children are enrolled in school are girls, which is 3% increase since the rule of the Taliban. However, there is still more that needs to be improved. Afghanistan's education system is nowhere near its full potential. Over the years, there have been many acts of reform to help Afghanistan. For example, after the fall of the Taliban rule in 2001, 2 United Nations agencies, the UNCEF and the UNESCO, led the reconstruction efforts, working closely with the new Afghan government, particularly with the Ministry of Education. Actually, UNICEF's Back to School campaign in Afghanistan was one of the biggest operations in history. Books and other materials were rushed to the schools so that 93% of them will be able to be open by March 2002, the first day of term. Many governments also contributed to the reconstruction. However, there are still 2 million kids in rural areas and refugee camps who are denied their rights to an education, thus opening a world of temptation for these kids. The UN must reach out to the population who is denied the basic right of education. With the funds being distributed by the United States government, schools should be built in areas that don't have them. Hence, giving everyone who wants to go to school the opportunity to enlighten themselves. In addition, to make sure that kids are attending these schools, UN troops should police these cities, making sure that every child stays off the streets away from the criminals. The combination of Afghan officers and UN troops can keep these kids safe from the Taliban or Al-Qaeda influence. Every child attending school will receive different color badges showing that they are a student. The difference in colors represents the different school districts in Afghanistan. This ID system helps the Afghan officers and UN troops identify the students that cut class. In order for this to have any impact on Afghanistan, these operations must last for a number of years. Now, one may ask what will be taught in these schools. To lower the literacy rate of Afghan children, these kids will be taught the basic skills of reading, writing, and mathematics, instead of learning how to create explosives that can wipe out a city block. Although the Black to School operation was a success, there must be a policy that has more of a long-term effect. Therefore, I think by avoiding this mistake of making a short-term change will really help the boys avoid becoming a part of the Taliban. Now remember, Afghanistan has had its struggles before with women not being allowed to attend school during the Taliban era of Afghanistan. Women who were doctors and even lawyers had become hookers and beggars because they were not allowed the necessary education they needed. However, since 2001, there are more and more women being granted their right of education, thus starting a revolution. Now, making education more accessible and efficient will continue this revolution. The fact that 70% of children in Afghanistan are under the poverty line is devastating. Kids who live in impoverished ghettos or villages do not see a way of leaving their impoverished lives other than joining the radical Taliban, causing the impoverished villages of Afghanistan to be a jackpot for Taliban officials who want to recruit young boys. They promise these boys food, shelter, and even education. However, these riches all come with a fatal consequence. In recent news, there was a story of a 6-year-old boy who was found with an explosive belt. Stripes and Stars News reports that the child asked an Afghan officer how to work the device, for he forgot how to use it. The same report also broke down the recruiting process for young boys joining the Taliban. It states that after the Taliban gathers the boys up, they take them to an Islamic fundamental school in Pakistan, where one U.S. officer says they are being brainwashed into becoming suicide bombers. A statistic was brought up in this article that describes the villages in the Ander district of Afghanistan where there are only 300 people to a village, and of those 300, 5 to 10 boys are taken by the Taliban each year. The Taliban will increase in number as years pass. The only way to stop this is to take on the issue of poverty, because it is obvious that the Taliban are recruiting kids who are in need and are among the 20 million under the poverty line. Thus, this brings up the question of how is this task going to be accomplished? Well, there are a number of ways for the Afghan government and the UN to tackle this problem together. A good way to stop these kids from joining the Taliban is to create a Boys and Girls Club or a YMCA type of system for every village. This will get the kids off the street as well as allow them to enjoy their youth. In addition, homeless shelters and clinics should be created in order to feed the hungry, house the homeless, and nurture the ill. Creating these types of places will help give the young men food, health, and a home, providing them everything that the Taliban offers them. The goal here is to destroy the dependence that these young boys have for the Taliban. If they already have what the Taliban offers them, then why should they join a group where they can be killed? Essentially, independence is the key for these young boys and their families. These economic proposals may sound pricey. However, these are necessary measures to help Afghanistan's issues with poverty. As a country, America faces the same type of issues with young men joining different gangs and groups. For example, in the inner cities of America, kids as young as 12 years old are joining violent gangs such as the Bloods and Crips. It is proven that due to their living conditions, these kids feel the need to belong to something, no matter if it's bad or good. This need for belonging may come from dealing with the absence of a father figure, the death of a family member, terrible living conditions, and in some cases, the need to survive. This definitely relates to the situation of young boys in Afghanistan. The lack of education and money has forced Afghan boys to join these terrible groups as a way to fill a void of education and money. The Taliban are not going to stop recruiting these boys without the United States, UN, and Afghan government working together to stop them. Making improvements in the education and economy of Afghanistan will get these young boys on the right track and will show that there is a life outside of their village, that they do not have to settle and become a suicide bomber for a non-respective organization like the Taliban. I think the policies presented will liberate these young boys from the pressure that the Taliban has placed on them. Young men of Afghanistan will have a bright future if these ideas come to life.